They called it tradition. I called it theft. When my own family tried to use my name for a luxury banquet, family should mean love and respect, not fraud and forged contracts. Here's how I stopped being their financial hostage. They say family will love you unconditionally until you stop paying the bill. My name is Marcella Watson. I'm 44 years old and I've lived my entire life in Atlanta, Georgia. I own a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on the south side, nothing fancy. White siding that needs repainting, a creaky porch swing that belonged to my mama, and a stubborn mortgage that's been nipping at my heels since she passed. I work in the credit department at First State Bank, which sounds more glamorous than it is. My days are spent behind a desk, surrounded by loan applications and the smell of burnt coffee from the break room. I live alone. No husband, no kids, unless you count the potted plants I've kept alive longer than some of my cousins have kept jobs. Every year, like clockwork, my family organizes a big celebration for my grandmother, Viola. She's 86 now, sharp as a tack and still quick to tell you when your outfit looks cheap. In her younger days, she was the glue that held us together. Sunday dinners, Christmas Eve gatherings, Easter picnics. Viola made sure every occasion felt like a Hallmark movie. But somewhere along the way, after Mama died and I inherited the house, the family's version of tradition turned into Marcella will handle it. At first, I didn't mind. I was grieving, and throwing myself into family events gave me purpose. But the years wore on. My cousins stopped chipping in. My uncles, who once manned the grill or decorated tables, started having back problems or working late, and slowly the weight of hosting and funding fell entirely on me. This year, the whispers started early. I didn't hear about the plan directly. I stumbled onto it. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was setting out dishes in the kitchen for a small church group meeting when I heard voices drifting down the hallway. My cousin Chanel's laugh, high-pitched, the kind that makes you think she's been sipping wine, followed by my nephew Rico's deep, lazy drawl. "She's gonna flip when she sees the place," Chanel said, her tone dripping with excitement. "Oh yeah," Rico replied. "I told you, Ritz Gardens is the spot, classy, big enough for everyone, and—" He lowered his voice, but not enough. "Marcella's paying. You know she got that bonus." My hands froze around a stack of plates. Bonus? I hadn't told a soul about that. It wasn't even much, just a small year-end thank you from the bank. I listened harder. "She doesn't even need to be asked," Chanel continued. "She'll just do it." "Like always." Rico laughed. "Guess it's good she never had kids, more money for the rest of us." The air in the hallway felt thick, like it was pushing against my chest. I stood there, every word searing itself into my mind. They'd already chosen the venue, the menu, probably even the flowers, and not one of them had thought to speak to me. My role was simply to open my wallet. When the rest of the family gathered at my place that Sunday, the manipulation came dressed as casual conversation. Aunt Brenda leaned back on my couch, scanning my living room like it was a bank statement. "You've done nice with this place, Marcella," she said, drawing out the words. "Must mean business is treating you right." Uncle Larry, never one to mince words, grinned. "You're our most successful one, baby girl. Who else could pull off a party for Viola? She deserves the best." The others chimed in, throwing around ideas that sounded more like demands. Live jazz band, top shelf liquor, 3-course dinner, and my personal favorite, "We'll all chip in next time," which I'd heard every single year without seeing a dime. I smiled, keeping my voice steady. "Sounds amazing. But let's talk about splitting the cost evenly." The room fell silent. Then came the excuses. "We're saving for vacation." My car's in the shop. Christmas cleaned me out. All while sipping wine I'd bought and eating snacks I'd prepared. And then the dagger, Chanel's faux sweet voice. Marcella, honey, it could be Grandma's last birthday. Don't you want it to be special? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked around at the faces of people who shared my blood but not my sense of responsibility. Something in me shifted in that moment. I realized I wasn't just tired. I was done. I told them I'd think about it, and I did, for days. At work, while stamping approved or denied on applications, my mind kept circling back to that hallway conversation. The way they'd spoken about me, like I was some kind of family ATM. The way they'd assumed, not asked. By Friday, I had a plan. I called Ritz Gardens myself. Booked the date. Reserved the private dining room with the chandelier and floor-to-ceiling windows. Ordered the flowers, the candles, even a small stage for the band. Everything they dreamed of, except one small detail. The bill. The deposit came out of my pocket, sure, but the balance, that would be handled by the people enjoying the party. When the night came, my family arrived dressed to the nines. They took selfies in front of the floral archway, posted videos of Grandma Viola waving from her seat at the head table, toasted each other with champagne flutes. I smiled, played the gracious host, and let them bask in the illusion. It wasn't until halfway through the main course that the restaurant manager approached the table with a polite but firm reminder. The remaining balance was due. The shift in the room was almost comical. Laughter died mid-sentence. Forks froze in midair. Some people stared at me, waiting for me to pull out my card. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and said, "This year we're doing things a little differently. No loans. No, I'll get you Friday. You want a seat at the table? You pay for it." Aunt Brenda's jaw dropped. Uncle Larry mumbled something about being blindsided. Chanel's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. One by one, they dug into their purses and wallets, some swiping cards, others counting crumpled bills. Rico muttered under his breath, but paid. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The point had been made. For the first time in years, I walked out of a family gathering feeling lighter, not because I'd saved money, though that was nice, but because I'd drawn a line they couldn't pretend not to see. I didn't hear from most of them for a week after the dinner. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive meme in the family group chat. The silence was almost luxurious, like someone had finally turned off a faucet that had been dripping for years. I went to work, came home, watered my plants, and felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in months. Of course it couldn't last. The first one to break the silence was Aunt Brenda. She showed up on my porch a week later, clutching a Tupperware container of sweet potato pie like it was a peace offering from a foreign country. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, baby girl," she said, rocking back on her heels. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't, but I also didn't step aside right away. "What's on your mind, Auntie?" She sighed dramatically, pressing the pie into my hands like a bribe. "We've all been talking. You embarrassed folks at that dinner. You know people still talking about it at church?" I leaned against the doorframe, letting her words settle. Embarrassed them for paying for their own food? "It ain't about that," she said, her voice dropping into that syrupy, half-scolding tone she used on me when I was a teenager. "It's about family. We take care of each other. That's how Grandma raised us." "No, Aunt Brenda," I said softly but firmly. "Grandma raised us to respect each other, and respect means not assuming one person will carry the load every single time." her lips pressed together like she'd bitten into something sour. You got a good job, Marcella. No kids, no husband, you can afford it. I could have told her about my mortgage, my car payment, the rising cost of groceries, the medical bills from when I sprained my ankle last year, and my insurance didn't cover physical therapy. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In their minds, my single childless status was a never-ending bank account. She left soon after, taking the pie with her when I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, watching her walk down my steps, wondering how many of them truly believed I was selfish, or if they were just angry. I'd stopped playing the role they'd written for me. The next wave came in the form of group messages. Rico sent a long text to the family chat about how some people forget where they come from. Chanel followed it with a Bible verse about generosity, as if God himself had co-signed their entitlement. Uncle Larry sent a thumbs-up emoji to both. I didn't reply. Let them talk. But the quiet rebellion didn't end there. 2 Sundays later, I arrived at Grandma Viola's house for our regular visit, only to find Chanel already there, sitting on the couch like she'd been waiting. Grandma looked tired, more than usual. Her silver hair was neatly wrapped in a scarf, but there was a heaviness in her eyes that made my chest tighten. Marcella, she said, patting the spot next to her, we need to talk about the party. I sat down, my knees brushing against the edge of the coffee table. What about it? Chanel leaned forward, all fake concern. We just want to understand why you did what you did. It made Grandma feel uncomfortable. I turned to my grandmother. Did it make you uncomfortable? She hesitated, then shook her head. I didn't like seeing folks upset, but I also don't like the idea of you being taken advantage of. It was the smallest crack of validation, but Chanel pounced before I could respond. Nobody's taking advantage. We just thought you were okay with it. You've always done it before. That's exactly the problem, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I've always done it, and not once has anyone offered to help without me having to ask. This year, I decided I wasn't going to go broke to keep up appearances. Chanel's smile slipped. So, you humiliated us instead? I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Humiliation in their eyes was simply being asked to pay their share. But I stayed calm. If paying for your own dinner is humiliating, maybe you should think about why. Grandma patted my hand. Enough now, she said softly. We're still family. But Marcella's right. Things gotta change. That was the closest I'd ever heard her come to openly defending me in front of them. I squeezed her hand and gave Chanel a look that said I wasn't backing down. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere shifted. I started getting fewer invitations to planning meetings for family events. Some cousins stopped calling altogether. At first, I thought maybe they were icing me out. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was peace. It was boundaries doing their job. Still, there was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. Little things started happening. Someone forgot to tell me about a church fundraiser I usually attend. I wasn't included in the group photo they posted on Facebook after a family barbecue. And one night, I came home to find an envelope slid under my door. Inside was a single piece of paper, a flyer for a family appreciation banquet, with a handwritten note. Don't worry, Marcella. We'll make sure you're not on the hook this time. I sat at my kitchen table staring at it, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. They thought they were being clever. But all it did was remind me how far they were willing to go to twist the knife. The truth is, I didn't regret what I'd done at the restaurant, not for 1 second. For years, I'd been so afraid of rocking the boat that I didn't realize I'd been drowning. That night, I climbed back into the boat, and if they didn't like it, they could swim. Sundays used to feel like fresh laundry, sun warmed, neatly folded, and smelling faintly of lemon. Lately, they felt like a shirt someone pulled from the hamper and sprayed with perfume, hoping no one would notice the wrinkles. I woke before my alarm, made coffee in my chipped world's okayest banker mug, and sat at the kitchen table with the week's budget spread out like a road map for a cross-country trip I didn't want to take. Mortgage, utilities, car note, groceries, the usual chorus, singing slightly off-key. Peace held steady until my phone lit up with church bells I'd assigned to Grandma's number. "Morning, baby," Grandma said, voice soft like wool. "You coming by service today?" "I am," I said. "Want me to bring those corn muffins you like?" Bring your patience, too." That last part landed with a quiet thud. I promised I would, but patience is one of those things folks love to demand from the person least likely to receive any in return. Mount Zion Baptist was 3 stop signs and 2 speed bumps from my house. The sanctuary was dressed in morning light, stained glass squares throwing blues and reds across the pews. Sister Deidre waved me toward the second row, and I squeezed in beside Grandma. Chanel sat on the other side, perfume loud enough to be a hymn, with Rico behind us scrolling his phone like God had a TikTok. Pastor Williams preached on stewardship, how we honor God with our resources, our time, and our relationships. Every other sentence felt like it was wearing my name tag. When he rapped and the choir sang us into the benediction, I felt something unclench in my chest. Maybe we'd make it out without theatrics. Then Sister Deidre took the mic again. "Church family, before you go, we've got a quick acknowledgement. A big round of applause for our very own," she paused, looking at a note card, "event chair for the Viola Watson Legacy Celebration, Miss Marcella." She pointed her whole arm at me like I was a door prize. My clapping muscles short-circuited. The congregation turned toward me, smiling and nodding in that way folks do when they think they're in on something warm and generous. A poster board appeared from nowhere. Chanel must have stashed it under the pew, covered in photos of Grandma and a giant headline, "Legacy Celebration, Saturday, June the 29th. At the bottom, in hand-lettered curls, "Sponsored by First State Bank, Marcella Watson, Community Partner." I stood slowly. "I didn't agree to chair anything," I said, voice even, because I knew how quickly a black woman's tone could become the story. "And my bank didn't sponsor anything," Chanel's smile calcified, "'cause it's just titles. You're the face, you know, like always." "Titles matter," I said. "Faces do too when folks try to borrow them to unlock bank doors." A few pews over, Aunt Brenda shifted, guilt flashing across her eyes and then tucking itself away behind a frown. Pastor Williams cleared his throat, the room's warmth cooling by 10 degrees. "Let's take this offline, saints." He closed with a prayer that sounded suspiciously like a cease and desist from heaven. Outside, under the live oak by the side lot, the meeting I hadn't agreed to showed up anyway. Aunt Brenda started it. "You could have handled that more gracefully." "I could have been asked first," I said. Rico lifted his chin. "It's for Grandma. You gonna deny her a legacy?" "Grandma's legacy doesn't require credit card debt," I said. "Or mine." Chanel folded her arms. "We already put deposits down." "Who's we?" I asked. A beat. "You. Kind of." That's when my stomach did a slow, practiced flip. Define kind of. Chanel didn't answer. Aunt Brenda did. "We use your email for some vendor accounts just to hold the dates. You can change it later." "Which vendors?" I said quietly. Chanel rattled them off like a grocery list. a caterer I recognized from a corporate holiday party, a decorator with a gold leaf logo, a band with the kind of price tag that gets folks to pretend they suddenly forgot how to clap on the 2 and 4. Each hold came with a non-refundable commitment fee. Each fee had been temporarily authorized. My head went buzzy at the edges. "You authorize with what?" I asked. Rico scuffed his sneaker against the asphalt. "I had a picture of your card from last year, remember? When you told me to order the cake on your account because you were stuck at work, it still worked." The world tilted. My mouth tasted like pennies. "You kept a photo of my card?" He shrugged. "It was convenient." "Convenient is how folks describe theft when they love you," I said, the words steady even as my heart jackhammered. "I'm calling my bank the minute I get to my car, and then I'm calling every single vendor." Chanel's jaw tightened. "You wouldn't dare cancel." "Watch me." They scattered before I could say more, maybe because they saw what I saw in my reflection on the church window. A woman who had finally stopped auditioning for the role of nice. Grandma stayed with me under the shade. She took my hand, her fingers cool and papery and dear. "You okay, baby?" "I will be," I said. "I'm sorry this is happening in your name." "Don't be," she said. "I taught them to be proud, not to be foolish. They twisted the lessons." In the car, I dialed the customer service number on the back of my card. I let the recorded voice lead me through a maze of options until I reached a human being. I reported unauthorized charges. I requested a new card. I asked them to note my account. No verbal authorizations allowed, no exceptions. The representative read my account history in a tone that suggested both sympathy and a professional inability to say, "Girl, your people are wild." When we hung up, I pulled into the shade of a Kroger parking lot and made vendor calls. One by one, I canceled every hold, every fee, we figured she'd cover it. The caterer was the worst. "We were excited to work with Miss Watson," the woman chirped. "It isn't every day we get to partner with a bank." "You weren't," I said, "and you won't. Please remove any reference to my employer. Also send me a copy of whatever authorization you received." "We have a signature on file." "Then you have a forgery," I said. "Email it." She did. The PDF arrived like a slap. My name written in handwriting that tried to copy mine but dressed itself in extra loops and drama like a child going to church. Beneath it, Rico's phone number. I forwarded the email to myself, then to my bank's fraud address, then printed it at the UPS store before I had time to think about how tired I already was. On Monday, I walked into the bank 15 minutes early and told my manager, Dana, the entire story. Dana is the kind of white woman who keeps a cardigan at her desk for compliance, because everything is a compliance issue if you stare at it long enough. She listened, throat tight, then pulled in compliance for a quick huddle. We drafted a short statement making it clear I could not authorize personal or business sponsorships and that anyone claiming otherwise was to be politely denied and referred to her. She told me to document. I thought of the PDF in my purse, of every gathered sigh my family had exhaled on my dime, and wanted to document the whole last decade in a bonfire. At lunch, I stepped out to air my brain and caught Rico leaning against the hood of my car like he'd ordered it. He wore that wounded puppy expression some grown men weaponize when the charm fails. "I heard you canceled the band," he said. "I canceled the fraud." He scoffed. "It wasn't fraud, it's family." "Family is a noun, fraud is a felony. You always gotta be clever." "I always gotta be careful," I said, "especially when folks I love confuse me with a debit machine." He exhaled through his nose. "This is why you're alone." The line landed like a needle in soft fruit, sharp, then sticky. I held his gaze. I'm alone because it's peaceful. There's a difference. He pushed off the hood and got in his car, tires chirping as he pulled away. My hands shook. I put them on the steering wheel until they remembered how to be hands again. By Thursday, the smear campaign had matured like bad fruit. A cousin posted a Facebook status about people with bank jobs who think the church is their playground, ending with a halo emoji for flavor. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in months texted, "Is it true you blocked Grandma's party?" I typed and deleted, then sent, "No. I blocked the part where you all use my name and money without consent." Read receipts popped up. No reply. That evening, a letter waited on my porch under a rubber band. Inside, a formal-looking invoice from a legacy event planning committee I'd never joined, addressed to me for balance due hall rental. Attached, a photocopy of a committee vote, the paper names checked by the same pen, the ink pressed deep, as if sheer pressure could make a lie true. A sticky note fluttered out. "We'll bring this to church Sunday if you don't handle it before then." I laughed, which wasn't as healthy as crying, but it kept me from throwing the whole envelope into the azaleas. I brewed tea and called Grandma. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting with the phone in her lap. "Hey, baby." "They put the committee in collections mode," I said. "Apparently I owe a balance for a haul I never picked." She sighed, the kind of tired that rattles in the middle of bones. "They came by here with papers, too," she said. "Asked me to sign something that would let Brenda make decisions for the family events. Said it would take the burden off you." "Power of attorney?" I asked, throat suddenly dry. "Didn't call it that," she said, "but it smelled like it." "What did you do?" "What you taught me after you started working at that bank." I could hear her smile. "I told them I don't sign anything I don't read, and I don't read anything without my glasses, and my glasses only show up when my granddaughter is here." My laugh cracked and mended all at once. "I'm on my way, Grandma." "Bring those corn muffins you promised last week," she said, "and bring your spine. They aiming for it." I hung up and stood in my quiet kitchen, the kettle ticking like a distant clock, the whole house listening. Boundaries, I'd learned, aren't fences you build once. They're doors you keep locking because some folks carry spare keys cut from your old behavior. I grabbed my purse, the folder with printouts, and the muffins. The porch light blinked to life as if it knew I'd be coming back late. Halfway down the steps, my phone buzzed again. A new email. Subject line, final notice. Authorization confirmation needed. The sender was a banquet hall across town I hadn't called yet. The body was only one sentence and an attachment. "Please confirm you approve this revised contract signed by M. Watson for Saturday, June the 29th. The signature looked almost perfect this time. Almost. What would they try next once I told them no to this as well? The banquet hall's email sat in my inbox like a live wire. I didn't open the attachment right away. Instead, I set my phone down, stared at the steam curling from my tea, and tried to breathe past the sharp, metallic taste in my mouth. "Almost perfect," the subject line had said. Whoever forged my name had studied it this time, practiced the tilt of the M, the hook on the W. I forwarded the email to myself, the bank, and Dana at work. Then I called the number listed in the signature. A polite woman answered, her tone brisk in that way people get when they assume they're speaking to someone who already owes them money. "Banquet services, this is Louise." "This is Marcella Watson. I received a contract from you, one I didn't sign. I need you to cancel it immediately and send me every single record of communication tied to my name." She hesitated, then pulled up the account. "Well, We spoke with a family member who confirmed. That confirmation is fraudulent, I said. You've been given forged documentation. If you proceed with this booking, you'll be complicit in credit card fraud. Shall I connect you with the bank's legal department? That word, legal, worked like bleach. She tripped over herself, assuring me she'd cancel the contract and send the files. 10 minutes later, my inbox filled with PDFs, emails from a generic Gmail account signed on behalf of M. Watson, a scan of my signature that had been traced from God knows what, and a note from event committee chair that read, Marcella is traveling but fully authorizes this on a return. Traveling. That was rich. I hadn't been farther than Decatur in months. By Friday, my patience was wearing to the threads. I'd patched leaks all week, canceled vendors, disputed charges, filed reports. But my family was like water in a basement. They found new cracks. That afternoon, I stopped by Grandma's with the muffins, expecting maybe a quiet coffee in her kitchen. Instead, I walked into a living room arranged for ambush. Aunt Brenda on the love seat, Chanel in the armchair, Rico standing near the window with his arms crossed. Grandma sat in a recliner, her expression as still as the china doll on the shelf behind her. We're here to make peace, Aunt Brenda began, voice smooth as furniture polish. You start peace with an apology, I said, keeping my coat on. Chanel leaned forward, her bracelets clinking. We thought we were doing you a favor. Planning things so you wouldn't have to. By stealing my card information, by forging my name? That's harsh, Rico muttered. It's accurate, I said. Aunt Brenda tried again. Marcella, baby, we just wanted the celebration Grandma deserves. You've got the resources, the connections. I cut her off. And you've got the audacity. You've been treating me like an open tab for years, and I finally closed it. Now you're trying to pry it back open with lies and signatures you stole from God knows where. Grandma's gaze moved slowly from me to them. I told you, she said, her voice low but iron strong, you were making fools of yourselves. You dragged my name into this, and you dragged hers through the mud. Chanel flushed. We didn't think it was that serious. That's the problem, I said. You never think it's serious when it's my money, my name, my credit on the line, but if I pulled this on any of you, you'd call the police. Rico shifted his weight, eyes sliding away. Aunt Brenda's lips pressed thin. I set the muffins on the coffee table. These are for you, Grandma. As for the rest of you, this conversation is over. The next time you use my name without consent, I won't be canceling contracts. I'll be pressing charges. The air thickened, a silence so dense you could feel it pressing against your skin. I walked out, the sound of my own footsteps steady, almost too steady. My car felt like sanctuary when I slid inside. As I drove home, the city rolled by in streaks of streetlight and shadow. I thought about boundaries, how people treat them like temporary fences, easy to climb if you're family. But the truth was clearer than it had ever been. If I didn't hold this line, I'd be paying for their parties, their mistakes, and their arrogance until the day I died. That night, I drafted one last message to the family group chat. No frills, no apologies. Going forward, I will not fund, organize, or be listed as a contact for any family event. Any attempt to use my name or financial information without consent will result in legal action. I hit send, turned off my phone, and let the quiet settle around me like armor. I didn't expect the fallout to arrive so quickly. By Sunday morning, I'd been removed from the family group chat altogether. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. My absence was probably celebrated with a flurry of gifts and the kind of laughter that sounds more like teeth grinding. But something else arrived in its place, text messages from numbers I hadn't seen pop up in years. The first came from my cousin Denise, who'd moved to Charlotte a decade ago to get away from the drama. Marcella. Just heard what happened. I'm proud of you. Been waiting for someone to tell them no. The second was from Jerome. Yes, that Jerome. The cousin who once borrowed my old car and returned it 3 weeks later with a dent and an empty tank. Look, I know I was a fool before, but they're out of pocket. Call me if you need a witness for anything. I didn't know if I'd ever take Jerome up on that offer, but it caught me off guard. For years, I thought the family tree was split between the entitled and the enablers. Now, small shoots of quiet support were sprouting through the cracks. Still, the ringleaders weren't giving up. That afternoon, I went to the grocery store, a quiet trip for coffee and bread. I was halfway down the baking aisle when I heard the unmistakable click of Chanel's heels on tile. She appeared at the end of the aisle in full church attire, royal blue suit, matching hat, lips pressed into a smile so fake it squeaked. "Well, look who's avoiding Sunday service," she said. I reached for the sugar. "Not avoiding, choosing peace." "You know," she said, stepping closer, "people are starting to say you've changed." "I have," I said, meeting her gaze. I learned the difference between generosity and being robbed with a smile. Her eyes flashed, but she kept the smile. "Grandma's disappointed." "That's interesting," I said, "because Grandma told me she's tired of everyone using her name as an excuse to drain my account." Chanel's jaw tightened. "It's not about money, Marcella. It's about family." "And family is about respect," I said. "If you can't give it, you don't get my resources. It's that simple." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned sharply and walked away, her heels clicking like a metronome set to irritation. When I got back to my car, there was a folded piece of paper tucked under my wiper. No handwriting on the outside, just a single typed line inside. "This isn't over, no signature, no clue," but I didn't need one. I could practically smell the Chanel number 5 on the page. By Monday, the whispers had spread beyond family. My coworker Lisa slid into the break room with that look people wear when they're pretending to warn you but can't wait to spill the tea. "Girl, I heard from my cousin, who goes to church with your cousin, that they're telling folks you're, unstable." I sipped my coffee. Let them. If being stable means funding grown adults' fantasies, I'll happily be unstable. But it wasn't just gossip. The banquet hall email had made me realize something bigger. If they could forge my signature once, they could do it again. This wasn't just about the party anymore. It was about control. That night, I pulled out a manila folder and started collecting everything. Printed emails, vendor contracts, screenshots of text messages, even that committee invoice they'd tried to pass off as legitimate. I labeled it family fraud and put it in my desk drawer right next to my will. The funny thing, I didn't feel sad. I felt prepared. Grandma called me later, her voice low. "Baby, I think you should come over tomorrow. Someone left papers in my mailbox again." "What kind of papers?" "They said it's for future event coordination." I didn't open it. "Figured you'd want to see." I told her I'd be there first thing after work, because if they were now trying to go through Grandma to get to me, then this was about to escalate in ways even they hadn't thought through. And I was ready. Grandma's house sat quiet under the weight of late afternoon heat, the kind that made the air itself feel thick with secrets. Her porch smelled faintly of lavender from the pot of flowers I'd planted for her on Mother's Day. One of those small gestures nobody in the family ever thought to do. She was waiting for me in the doorway, a manila envelope in her hands like it was a live grenade. "They came by around lunch," she said. Brenda was driving. Rico was in the passenger seat, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They didn't even ring the bell, just slid this in the mailbox and drove off. I took the envelope, the paper warm from the heat. Inside were 4 stapled pages headed with a fancy faux logo, the Marcella Watson Family Legacy Committee. The first page was a memorandum of understanding that claimed to formalize decision-making power for all future family events. The second page listed appointed representatives. Chanel as chair, Brenda as treasurer, Rico as logistics coordinator. My name was right there under primary financial liaison with a note, authorized to secure and guarantee funding as needed. They'd left a blank space for my signature. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. They really think persistence is the same thing as permission. Grandma watched me, her gaze steady. I didn't sign nothing, and I sure didn't call you here to give them a chance. I called you because I'm tired, baby. Tired of seeing them pick at you like vultures on fresh meat. I sat down beside her on the couch, the paper crackling in my hand. They're getting bolder because I've never made them face consequences. That ends now. We went over the details, me pointing out where the language was vague on purpose. Phrases like "as deemed appropriate" and "in the interest of family unity" that could be twisted into open-ended authority over my money. The legalese was sloppy, but the intent was sharp. I pulled my phone from my purse and snapped photos of every page. Then I emailed them to Dana at work with a brief note. Need this documented for potential fraud case. Family dispute escalating. Grandma frowned. You're bringing work into this? I'm bringing protection into this, I said. If they want to drag my name through mud, they're going to have to step into a courtroom to do it. We were still talking when a knock came at the door. Quick, urgent, the kind of knock that carries an agenda. Grandma raised an eyebrow. That's not a neighbor. It was Rico. He looked smaller than usual, no swagger, no phone glued to his hand. Can I come in? I crossed my arms. Why? He glanced at Grandma, then back at me. I didn't sign those papers. I didn't even want my name on that committee. Chanel and Aunt Brenda put me down without asking, and I'm not trying to get mixed up in whatever they're doing to you. I studied his face, searching for the usual smirk or deflection. It wasn't there. His eyes darted toward the envelope in my hand. They told me it's just to keep family events organized. But after all the stuff with the vendors, I don't know. It's shady. Shady? I said. It's fraud. He winced. Yeah, I guess. Look, I'm not saying I've been an angel, but I don't want to be on the wrong side when this blows up. If you need me to say something to anybody, bank, police, whatever, I will. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was a crack in their wall. Grandma broke the silence. Rico, baby, if you're telling the truth, you start by not letting them use your name for their mess again. And you tell them Marcella's not standing alone in this. He nodded, eyes on the floor. Yeah, I can do that. After he left, I tucked the envelope back inside my purse. One of them switching sides doesn't mean they'll stop, but it does mean they're starting to feel pressure. Grandma's smile was small but fierce. Good. About time the snake started eating its own tail. I kissed her on the cheek, the scent of lavender and starch wrapping around me like armor. Driving home, I thought about what Rico's shift meant. For the first time, this wasn't just me versus them, it was me versus them, and the cracks were spreading. By the end of that week, the tension had the texture of a summer storm, thick, close, and waiting to break. Even at work, I could feel it humming in the background the way you can sense lightning before you see it. Every time my phone lit up, I half expected it to be another committee stunt. Friday night, as I was fixing myself a plate of leftover jambalaya, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found a FedEx envelope on the mat. No knock, no delivery person in sight, just my name printed in bold black letters. Inside was a letter on crisp, expensive paper with a gold embossed header, the Marcella Watson Family Legacy Celebration. I almost laughed. They were nothing if not consistent in their delusion. The letter was a formal notification that I was in breach of agreed-upon duties as primary financial liaison and had caused reputational harm to the family. It demanded that I remit 8 Thor 150 immediately to cover non-refundable deposits. Attached were copies of contracts I'd already canceled, some with paid in full stamped across the top, others with pending balance circled in red, and at the bottom, in a shaky signature that was meant to be mine, Marcella Watson. I sat down at the kitchen table, smoothed the letter flat, and took my time reading every line. I didn't feel shock anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused. I pulled out the manila folder from my desk drawer, the one I'd been building for weeks. Vendor emails, forged contracts, screenshots. Now this letter slid neatly into place like the final puzzle piece. The next morning I called Dana. "I'm done playing defense," I told her. "It's time to go on record, officially." She didn't miss a beat. "I'll set you up with our legal liaison, and Marcella, make sure you're ready for the fallout." "I've been ready," I said. By noon I was sitting across from a lawyer named Michael Rhodes in a quiet downtown office. He had the kind of calm that made you believe he could walk through a fire and not smell like smoke. I laid everything out on his desk. The folder, the envelope, the list of witnesses, including Rico. When I finished, he tapped a pen against the table. "You have enough here to send a cease and desist letter and file a police report for forgery and attempted fraud. If you want, we can also explore a restraining order to keep certain individuals from contacting you." The words "police report" hung in the air. I thought about Grandma, about the fallout, the whispers, the way they'd twist it. But then I thought about the FedEx letter, the contracts, the years of being the family's wallet. "Do it," I said. That night I drove to Grandma's. She was in the kitchen making cornbread, the smell warm and familiar. When I told her what I'd done, she didn't flinch. "They've been skating by on your kindness for too long," she said, setting the skillet down with a decisive thud. "If this is what it takes for them to learn, so be it." We ate in silence for a while, but it wasn't heavy. It was the kind of quiet that says we understand each other without needing to talk it to death. Before I left, Grandma handed me a small box. "Your mama kept this," she said. Inside was a fountain pen, the metal worn smooth with age. "She said it was for signing important things," Grandma said. "You make sure what you sign from now on is for you. Not for them." Driving home, I realized something. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. This was about reclaiming my name, literally. And in the coming days, I was going to make sure every last one of them understood it. Monday morning started quiet, almost too quiet. No text messages, no blocked calls, no cousin accidentally butt dialing me to leave a voicemail full of background chatter. By noon, the quiet cracked. Michael, my lawyer, called. "The cease and desist letters have been served. Brenda, Chanel, and Rico each signed for theirs." His voice carried that measured satisfaction of someone who just placed the final chess piece. "You should expect a reaction." He didn't have to tell me twice. The reaction came faster than I thought. That evening, as I was pulling into my driveway, Chanel's car screeched to a stop behind me, boxing me in. She stepped out in heels and a fitted suit, looking more like she was headed to court than my front yard. "You really think you can sic lawyers on us?" she demanded, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I don't think," I said, getting out of my car. "I know." Her eyes narrowed. "You've humiliated this family. Grandma's name is—" "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't drag Grandma into this. She's the only one who hasn't tried to forge my name, steal my money, or gaslight me into thinking I'm selfish for setting boundaries." "You're making it sound like we're criminals," she snapped. I met her stare. "When you forge a signature, use someone's financial information without consent, and send fraudulent invoices, what would you call it?" For the first time, she didn't have an answer ready. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. "I'm done talking, Chanel," I said, unlocking my front door. "The next time you or Brenda or anyone else tries to use me, it won't be a letter. It'll be the police." She hesitated, like she wanted to fire back, but then she just got into her car and drove off. No screeching tires this time. Inside, my phone buzzed. A text from Rico. "Heard about the letters. I told them I'm not getting dragged down with them. If you need me to back you up in front of the cops, I will." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and let the relief roll in, slow and steady. The next day, Michael forwarded me 3 emails, one from each of them, acknowledging the cease and desist. The tone varied. Brenda's was stiff and formal, Chanel's was clipped and sour, and Rico's was a single sentence, "Understood, won't happen again." I knew better than to believe this was over forever. People like them didn't transform overnight, but I also knew they'd think twice before trying me again. That weekend, I went to Grandma's for Sunday dinner, just the 2 of us. She'd made fried chicken, greens, and mac and cheese, and as we ate, she gave me one of those long, steady looks that see past all the surface noise. "You look lighter," she said. "I am," I admitted. I finally made them hear me. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. She smiled, slow and proud. "That's my girl. Your mama would have been clapping from the front row." When I left, the evening air felt different, cleaner, like the storm had finally passed, leaving just enough breeze to remind me that I'd weathered it without breaking. As I pulled into my driveway, I thought about that fountain pen in the box at home, about what I'd sign with it next. And I knew, without question, it would never again be for someone else's greed. It would be for me, always.